Right. So I'm talking to Hankus Netsky about the 1996 Klezmer Research Conference, one in a series of short interviews with participants. Um, First, what do you remember about the conference? What are a couple of things you remember that struck you?
Well, I remember just being just overwhelmed with the fact that my advisor at Wesleyan at the time gave me like a $10,000 budget to put together a conference the first month that I was in grad school, which I thought was like very bold of him, and put a lot of responsibility on me to do something big right away. I'd never done anything like that before in my life. That was, of course, Mark Slobin, and also gave me someone to work with on putting that together in terms of all the logistics, which was Franja Berkman, who was entering the master's program at that same time. And so the first thing that that I did was came up with a dream list of who we should invite to the conference, and then given the budget, whether it would work. The question was whether it would work in terms of airfares and hotel. But the hotel at Wesleyan meant staying on the campus. There weren't any hotels, much in the way of hotels in Middletown at that point. And that was great. There was actually a place to put people up. So it was possible to do. But not only that, I really remember the enthusiasm that all of the participants had. I can't remember anybody saying no. And that is unusual for a conference, that people felt like, let's do this. Yeah, let's actually do this and present to each other and actually, as a community, critique each other's presentations and get to discuss things and spend 2 days together and hear a concert and put together a concert. It was just a great opportunity.
Okay, and so there was a concert too, and I don't remember who played at the concert. I have no memory.
Oh, so again, you delegated a lot to me, actually, which again I really appreciated. It was a lot. I mean, we sat together and looked at the program, but you were really very, you wanted it to be hands-on for me. And so I got to decide who played at the concert. And we structured the concert around, well, we had a few people coming from long distances. It seemed like the people coming from long distances should definitely play at the concert. So Joel Rubin played at the concert, and Elaine Hoffman Watts and Joe Borak played at the concert with, I think I was playing piano with them. We also heard Kurt Björling play at the concert. Um, I played a set. I remember that I played on Joel Rubin's set. I played with Joe Borak and Elaine. Pretty sure Zev Feldman led dancing at the concert.
Really?
And
I don't
in
remember
particular,
that.
oh yeah, I remember it well because he led dancing to our Philadelphia klezmer group.
Okay.
And one of the things about that that was so interesting was he liked the tempos,
Uh-huh.
because it was traditional in Philadelphia to play Freiluchs and Bogars slower than they played them in New York. And those were tempos that were much more like what people had done in Europe.
Mhm.
Uh, so for me, that was a very exciting aspect of the concert, was seeing the it was the Philadelphia repertoire that I was just starting to learn, since I was focusing on that as it was eventually going to be my dissertation, um, to see how it worked with dance, with Joe and Elaine playing with me. And Joel played a set, I'm pretty sure, of more European klezmer. And I remember Kurt playing a set of stuff that the Chicago Klezmer Ensemble had done, I think, at that time. Um, I mostly remember those three ensembles performing at the concert. There might have been another one, but I'm not sure what it was. And there were a number of participants who were not performers at the concert. For example, Barbara Kirchenbach-Gimblett was there, and I believe Marty Schwartz was there, and because I sort of remember somebody picking him up at the airport, but I might be wrong. And Robert Garfias, they were sort of more from the academic side.
And Bob Rothstein, right? Yeah.
And right, and Bob Rothstein. And so they did not perform, but a bunch of the participants did perform. I don't remember, I
It,
don't think Neil Strum performed.
okay. Well, yeah, that's good to fill that in because I don't think I have the program of the concert, just the poster. uh, and we're not sure where the cassettes are of it was recorded, but I don't know what happened to the cassettes.
So I can tell you that, I mean, I got a copy of the cassettes. I thought that, again, Franja, who is probably the only one associated with the concert who's no longer with us, um, I thought she made one for the library at Wesleyan, and
Oh,
I know she gave me copies of the cassettes because they're in
oh.
her handwriting.
So if you
Um,
have those, then they could be
yeah,
digitized.
they just say Wesleyan Klezmer Conference. We'll correspond about that for sure.
Okay, great. So what about the presentations? What struck you about the presentations?
The great thing about the presentations at this conference was that almost nobody gave a written presentation at this conference. But what's really beautiful was because of your book that came out in 1996, 19, no, no, what am I saying, 2000, there were actually years went by when people could reflect on what they'd done at the conference and turn it into a coherent presentation that they could get feedback on, and so that the conference as it looks in the book is a lot more organized than the talks at the conference were. I'll just say, I mean, I
Right,
remember
right.
very well, I remember giving a talk where I was, my structure was basically around an article I'd written on Philadelphia Klezmer. So I had an easy job. I'd already done that. And we did some examples. I think I had some musicians actually play because they were there. But I remember, Zev gave a talk that was about the Bogar as it evolved,
Right.
and then made that an article that became the only thing around for many years in terms of analysis of how a dance evolved from a Jewish dance evolved from European roots to the American context. Barbara Kirchenbach-Gimblett gave a talk from notes. I remember that well also. It was brilliant. It was about the resurgence of klezmer and its homage to older models of Jewish music, of Jewish music production in America. Um, but then it became this incredible article, Sounds of Sensibilities, which I still use in all my classes. so I remember really well in the presentation that Yale Strom, I think very wisely, focused on his travels in
Mhm.
Romania.
Right.
Um, it was fascinating. And it's interesting because one beef I know that, Zev Feldman would have with Yale would be, I mean, his focus before that, I think he'd already worked with Kozlovsky. He did, but it wasn't about that at all. Kozlovsky, who was a musician who played with Klezmer, but himself, was not really a klezmer per se. And so the talk was all about traveling and about like going from town to town and meeting certain musicians. And I remember at one point, Yale was talking about some musicians he met in Romania, and Zev said, like, wow, you met them too, or something like that. It was like, they sort of saw that they actually were both doing important European field work,
Mhm.
uh, which was great. And I remember very well the moment that somebody's already mentioned on emails, which was, this initial discussion at the beginning, like people were sort of talking about ground rules for Klezmer, and Joe Borak saying, well, the one thing is that unless you're Jewish, there's no way you could do this,
Mhm. Mhm.
you just have to have this in your kishkas, you just have to be born with it, and it's like all the stuff that everybody always, it's like all these cliches that people who represent cultures often have about that. And then because of Kurt's incredible playing that same night, Joe came back to the morning session, and the first thing he said is, like, I know we have to get this session going, but one thing I need to say is that I've never heard anybody play this music as beautifully as this gentleman over here. And I was completely wrong yesterday. And that doesn't happen in a lot of conferences.
For sure.
Uh, so that was very exciting thing about the presentations. I also remember it being timed really well. I mean, this was, to Franya's credit, I have to say, just organizing it really well in terms of when, what was served, when it was brought in, how late we could go. It ran pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, I do like to run a tight ship at a conference.
And you had a lot to do with that too. I assume maybe the two of you coordinated that. I remember, honestly. I mean, I remember her father was there,
Oh,
David, and he's a physician in Amherst, uh, and he knew nothing about anything we were talking about. I just, it's like he was not a fan of Klezmer. He didn't never know anything about it. But after the conference, that he said that he thought it was incredible. It was like a revelation to him, all this stuff.
oh,
Uh,
right.
it was, it was a pivotal moment. And what was great was it was the musicians and the academics who had really delved into the scene. So there wasn't any of this, like somebody just kind of doing a paper on it because they were interested in it, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
usually the model at academic conferences. It's like we just sidestep that entirely. Not that people haven't done wonderful work in that kind of context at, like,
Mhm.
say, SEM, but it wasn't an SEM kind of conference. It was really
Yeah,
a conference of people who had um, known about the genre and worked within it in various contexts.
which is the remarkable thing about the klezmer world in general. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
But the
it
musicians are also the researchers,
well, in some cases, I mean, I think Magdalena Valagorska is a good example of somebody who
Oh,
went from
okay. Yeah,
inside the scene and wrote an
right.
extraordinary book. But just to get the music on the map,
Yeah,
no one else was going to do it.
right, right, right.
And so that is very true. The downside of that is that then bringing it to the world as an academic discipline has been rocky for some people, for a lot of people,
Huh.
um, and so that most people who are interested in this music, it's kind of like the model like Ruth Rubin had, when she was collecting Yiddish folk songs, which was like there weren't any opportunities, so she performed them. So she would do her whole her whole mode of presenting her research was to put herself out there as a performer. And in a sense, that's kind of what we've modeled it after, I think, in the klezmer world,
Huh.
is to tell the audience by playing the music in a lot of cases. But some people did have the opportunity. Obviously, you've written 6 books, so um,
How did the did the conference impact your own personal work or your own personal viewpoints at all, or but you were moving along anyway, but did it?
well, it gave me a chance to put the work under the microscope more. I was already starting to do this. Um, I'm pretty sure in June, the June before I entered Wesleyan, I think I played with it's like Perlman in Philadelphia at the Mann Center, and that was my opportunity to get together with Joe Borak and Elaine Hoffman Watts, and so that already happened. That had already happened, and then I got a chance to bring them to Wesleyan to present what we'd already been working on in '96. I would say it created a community of scholars that are still together. I mean, I just interviewed Zev for the Yiddish Book Center Oral History Project for about 3.5 hours just like 3 weeks ago, and got him to tell probably the fullest version of his story that's going to be out there. So, but that community stayed in touch, and I think that was really, for me, that was the best thing about the conference. I worked with Joel Rubin on projects for Anna Lomax, on a whole series of things for her project on world music. So it was a chance for this community to be together in some context other than a concert.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was the idea, so I'm glad it worked. Well,
Yeah,
that's fine. I mean, that's really what I was hoping to sort of get, and collect like a set of these, and I think it'll be a nice thing to do with something like 30 years later
yeah,
point of view. I can't believe it's so many years. That's 30 years.
yeah.
Next year.
Yeah. I mean, the one I remember, the presentation I remember being the most like the article, I think, was Bob Rothstein.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because he really, again, the people with the academic background kind of knew how to do a presentation. um, his was very together. Then I heard him give it like 3 more times.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the other thing. If you actually write it down, guess what? You can keep presenting it.
Right.
But that was very memorable. I knew nothing about Klezmer Lushan, and then I realized my grandfather spoke it because I knew these words.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So that was very memorable for me. But there was one that didn't make it in, I think, because it wasn't American. Michael Alpert, I think, did something that was more. No, he did. He did it on Ben
Ben
Bible.
Basler. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
No, that made it in. Yeah.
Okay, Hankus. Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to talk, and we'll see how this project works out. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's just such a privilege to get to talk about this with you. You made it happen. I mean, come on. It's like.
Well, you did a lot of the work, so that's great.
But
Yeah.
thank you. Great. Well, we'll talk
Okay.
soon about other
Yeah.
things.
Right. Take
All right.
care.
Take care. Bye.